Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack the key insights from important research so you can get informed quickly. Today we're diving into a topic that, well, it affects millions of families. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, particularly in children. Now, often the first thought is medication, right? Stimulants. But we know treatments often come with other things to consider. So our mission for this deep dive is to look beyond just the pharmacy shelf. We're unpacking a really interesting scoping review by Shaw and colleagues. It just came out July 13th, 2025, and it focuses specifically on non-pharmacological approaches. Think everyday stuff like exercise and diet for managing ADHD symptoms in kids.
Yeah, what's really compelling here, I think, is how this review pulls together different strands of evidence. It's moving the focus, beyond just medication. It really shines a light on how lifestyle choices, things maybe we overlook, could genuinely impact a child's well-being and how they manage their symptoms. It's about a broader toolkit.
Exactly. So for you, our listener, this is about getting under the hood of the science behind these strategies, maybe getting some actionable ideas, and sparking some new thinking about, well, a more holistic way to look at ADHD management, things that could make a real difference day to day. Before we jump right into the findings, let's just quickly ground ourselves. What exactly is ADHD? Many of you will know this, but just as a refresher, it's a neurodevelopmental disorder, usually diagnosed around age 7, give or take, though you often see signs earlier, maybe 3 to 6 years old. And it's actually quite common, way more common than autism. For instance, children with ADHD outnumber those with autism almost 4 to 1.
That's right. And the official guide, the DSM-5, it lays out very specific criteria. We're basically talking about two main buckets of ongoing behaviors. First, there's inattention. And this isn't just, daydreaming occasionally. It's a real, consistent struggle with focusing attention, organizing tasks, following through, keeping track of things. Then you have hyperactivity, impulsivity. Again, this is more than just being energetic. It's that constant fidgeting, maybe trouble staying seated when expected, talking excessively, interrupting,
Yeah.
the difficulty waiting their turn.
Yeah.
And for a diagnosis, these things need to be pretty significant, impact daily life, and show up in different places like at home and at school.
Right, not just in one setting. And it's not just a childhood thing, is it? Many kids carry these symptoms into adulthood, though I understand they can look a bit different later on. Maybe less of the constant running around, more like trouble prioritizing, always being late, losing keys, phones, that kind of thing.
Exactly, symptoms often evolve. Which brings us to a really key question. Why are we even looking beyond medication, especially when stimulants are, for many, quite effective? Well, drugs like methylphenidate, they're often the first thing prescribed for school-aged kids. They work by helping balance brain chemicals like dopamine and norepinephrine, which helps with focus. But they can come with downsides. Parents often worry about side effects. Things like headaches, maybe loss of appetite, sleep problems are quite common. And there's also sometimes a slight concern about reduced growth rates, maybe exacerbating ketonic aches or mood issues. So considering these potential effects, it makes exploring other support avenues really, really important.
Yeah, I can imagine for parents, that list, especially things affecting sleep or growth, that's a big deal. It really highlights why looking at these other options is so critical. So, okay, what non-pharmacological routes did this Shaw review dig into? Let's kick things off with the power of movement. Exercise, right? Let's unpack this exercise piece. The review highlights it as being cost-effective, which is great and beneficial. But how? How does just moving your body actually help with ADHD symptoms? What's going on biologically?
This is where it gets really interesting. The review points to some newer research showing our muscles essentially talk to our brains during exercise. It's fascinating. They release these signals, a specific protein actually called cathepsin B. It travels from the muscles to the brain. And researchers found that as levels of this protein go up, memory function improves. It suggests a direct molecular link between getting active and boosting cognition.
Wow, so our muscles are like secret brain boosters. That's pretty incredible. Does that mean any kind of movement works, or are some better than others for triggering this?
Well, it's probably a bit more nuanced. Beyond that specific protein signal, just physical activity in general does good things for the brain. It increases blood flow, especially to key areas like the hippocampus.
The memory center.
Exactly. Crucial for memory and concentration. And this increased blood flow supports neuroplasticity, basically. Brain cells growing, making stronger connections, better communication, which in turn helps boost attention and focus. Plus, exercise can increase key neurotransmitters, think dopamine, serotonin, BDNF. And since we know ADHD often involves differences in dopamine processing, getting that exercise-induced dopamine boost can directly help with concentration, mood, and even emotional stability.
It's just amazing how interconnected it all is. Simple movement triggering these complex brain changes. So did the review specify what kinds of exercise seemed most promising for different ADHD challenges?
Yes, and this is where it gets really practical and useful, I think. The review did find some important distinctions, so here's a kind of quick breakdown based on their findings. For boosting those executive functions, things like selective attention, planning tasks, processing information, quickly the review pointed towards acute aerobic exercises.
Like short bursts, running, jumping jacks, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Quick, intense activity. But if the goal is improving overall attention and memory skills over the longer term, then it seems consistent, sustained aerobic exercise is more the key.
Okay, so consistency matters there. What about impulse control? That's a big one for many kids.
Right, for inhibitory control, helping kids pause and think before acting. Self-regulation, the review highlighted open skill sports.
Mhm.
Think basketball, soccer, maybe tennis. Sports where you're constantly reacting to a changing, unpredictable environment. It seems to help kids form directional action patterns, the term used. Basically, it trains the brain to adapt and respond more thoughtfully over time, reducing that impulsivity.
That makes sense. You have to constantly adjust. What about the opposite, like predictable activities?
Well, interestingly, those closed-skill activities, things like gymnastics, swimming laps, cycling, where the environment is stable, they seem particularly good for improving working memory, especially when done consistently over time.
And wasn't there something surprising about yoga?
Yes, this was quite notable. One study found that a 20-week yoga program, just 60 minutes, once a week, led to significant improvements in hyperactivity and even aggressive behavior. And that's significant because while many exercise types showed benefits for attention and executive function, getting statistically significant improvement specifically in hyperactivity was often less consistent across other studies. Yoga seemed to hit that mark.
Fascinating. So it really seems like you could potentially tailor the type of movement to the child's specific needs or challenges. What's the big takeaway message on exercise then?
I think the overall message is that exercise is this really versatile, multifaceted tool. It's generally accessible, it's cost-effective, and look, it has tons of other health benefits anyway, right? Cardiovascular, bone health. While we always need more research, especially bigger, longer-term studies, to really nail down the effects on things like hyperactivity consistently, the biological reasons why it helps are becoming much clearer. It's a powerful option with relatively low barriers.
Okay, powerful stuff. Now let's shift gears. From movement to meals. The deep dive also looked at diet, didn't it? And there was a concerning link mentioned right at the start.
Yes, that's right. The review highlighted a pretty significant connection between ADHD and obesity. It found children with ADHD have about a 1.5 times higher likelihood of also being obese, an odds ratio of 1.56 specifically. And this likely isn't just a coincidence. It suggests there might be underlying links, perhaps involving dietary habits, or even those same neurotransmitter systems affecting both weight regulation and ADHD symptoms. So looking at dietary interventions gives us this potential double benefit, addressing two chronic health concerns possibly at the same time.
That connection is really striking. Okay, so beyond just that association, what did the review actually find about specific dietary patterns? What helps versus what might make things worse for ADHD symptoms?
The patterns were actually quite strong and consistent in the review, it found. Healthy eating patterns, diets rich in fruits, vegetables, fish, those good polyunsaturated fatty acids or PUFAs, these were linked with fewer ADHD symptoms, a reduction in risk by about 37%.
Okay, so the good stuff helps. What about the other end of the spectrum?
While conversely, unhealthy patterns showed a strong negative link. A Western-type diet, lots of red and processed meats, refined grains like white bread, sugary soft drinks, hydrogenated fats that increase the risk of ADHD symptoms by a whopping 92%.
92%, that's huge.
It is. And similarly, a junk food-based diet, lots of processed foods, artificial food colorings, high sugar intake, that increased risk by 51%. It paints a pretty clear picture. Though the review also noted, interestingly, that children with ADHD often find it harder to stick to healthy diets, maybe due to those executive function challenges around planning and self-regulation. It can become a tough cycle.
Yeah, that makes total sense. The very challenges of ADHD might make it harder to follow the diet that could help manage it. Okay, so that's overall patterns. What about specific interventions? Supplements, elimination diets. This is where people often look for that quick fix, right?
Exactly. And this is where the review gets quite nuanced and, frankly, debunks some common ideas. Let's break it down. For elimination-style diets, a few foods diet FFD, which is quite restrictive and carefully managed, did show a significant positive effect on ADHD symptoms in the studies reviewed. Restricted elimination diets, REDs, which are maybe slightly less intense, also showed some benefit. However, the review adds a strong caution here. We need bigger, better-designed studies, specifically blinded ones. Plus, there are real concerns about potential nutritional deficiencies with these diets, so they absolutely require careful professional monitoring. They aren't a DIY approach.
Okay, so some promise there, but with big caveats. What about just cutting out artificial food colors? That's something you hear about a lot.
Yeah, the evidence there was less convincing, according to this review. While some smaller measures showed potential, eliminating artificial food colorings did not significantly impact core ADHD symptoms in the main analyses. The effect sizes were generally small.
Interesting. So not the magic bullet some might hope for. What about supplements? Omega-3s, zinc, iron, are these helpful?
This is where the review sends a very clear message: no. Or at least not consistently for reducing core ADHD symptoms based on current evidence. The review explicitly states that omega-3, zinc, and iron supplements are not recommended for universally reducing ADHD symptoms due to a lack of consistent documented effect.
Wow, okay, because you hear so much about omega-3s especially.
Right, and omega-3s are generally good for heart health, no question. But for ADHD, one pilot study mentioned did show omega-3s improving emotional self-regulation, but only in children who were already taking medication, and it didn't significantly change their core inattention or hyperactivity symptoms. So it might help with some related aspects, but not the core disorder based on the review's findings.
And other supplements, like vitamin D or magnesium.
Similar story, really. Limited or inconsistent benefits reported. Often, any small effect seen was only when used alongside medication, or if the child had a specific diagnosed deficiency in that vitamin or mineral to begin with. They simply need much more rigorous research before any broad recommendations could be made. Same goes for things like probiotics, or even some Chinese herbs mention some hints of promise, but usually as add-ons and needing much more solid evidence.
So the practical takeaway here for you listening, trying to navigate all the online claims, it sounds like focusing on that overall healthy, balanced diet, lots of whole foods, fruits, veggies, fish is the way to go, rather than chasing individual supplements or cutting out whole food groups without really strong, consistent proof.
Precisely. That's the clear message from this review regarding diet. Focus on the pattern. A healthy pattern rich in vegetables, fish, PUFAs. That's what's recommended. The evidence for specific supplements universally reducing ADHD symptoms, unless there's a clear deficiency, just isn't there consistently. It's about the whole picture, not a single magic ingredient.
Okay, we've covered a huge amount of ground. From those amazing muscle-to-brain signals during exercise to the, well, frankly, quite stark impact of processed foods versus whole foods, it really feels clear that both getting active and eating thoughtfully have real potential as maybe complementary tools for managing ADHD symptoms in kids. It underscores how linked our physical and neurological health are.
Absolutely. And the review really emphasizes that word, complementary. These aren't necessarily presented as standalone cures, especially if medication is working well or needed. But they are vital strategies, particularly when medication options might be limited or maybe not preferred by a family, or perhaps aren't fully managing all symptoms. The idea that seems most effective is an integrated plan. Combining medication where appropriate with behavioral therapies and these lifestyle strategies like exercise and diet. That holistic approach seems to be the most powerful.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, this research sounds really promising, but like all science, it has limits, right? What were some of the limitations or caveats mentioned in this specific review that we should keep in mind?
Yeah, that's important. The authors were upfront about several limitations. First, they only searched one database, PubMed. So it's possible they might have missed some relevant studies published elsewhere. Also, there was a lot of variation, heterogeneity, they call it, in the studies they included. Different study designs, different population sizes, different lengths of time for the interventions. That makes it a bit harder to generalize the findings to all kids with ADHD.
Okay, so not all studies were created equal, basically.
Pretty much. And a really crucial point. Most of the data we have on these interventions is short-term. We don't have a lot of solid, consistent information about whether the benefits stick around if kids maintain these exercise habits or dietary changes into their teen years or adulthood. That long-term view is missing.
That's a big gap.
It is. And finally, some studies relied on reports from parents or teachers or even the kids themselves. And while valuable, these subjective reports can sometimes have biases. How one person rates hyperactivity might differ from another's rating.
Right, subjective measures.
Okay, so bearing those limitations in mind, What's the kind of big picture message for our listener? Someone who wants to use this information thoughtfully, but not jump to conclusions.
I think the main message is this. Exercise and healthy eating patterns clearly offer broad health advantages, and they show really strong promise for helping manage certain ADHD symptoms, especially cognitive ones like attention and memory. However, we still need more high-quality research, particularly large, well-controlled randomized trials, to really confirm just how effective they are for which specific symptoms, maybe for which subgroups of kids, and exactly how best to implement them. So they're very valuable tools to explore, absolutely, but we need to approach them with that evidence-based perspective, understanding where the science is strong and where we still need more answers. What an incredibly insightful deep dive. From understanding how running can boost dopamine to seeing the clear benefits of cutting back on processed foods, it really shows how everyday choices can play a role in managing ADHD. It's such a powerful reminder that health isn't just about one thing, it's holistic. And our understanding of conditions like ADHD just keeps evolving.
It really does. This review demonstrates that while medication is an important tool, we have these other significant avenues for support through lifestyle. And understanding the why behind it, the biological mechanisms, the specific benefits that can empower families and clinicians to explore these options more effectively, maybe tailor them better as part of a comprehensive care plan.
So, for you, our learner, maybe a final thought to consider. Knowing what we've discussed today, the brain benefits of different exercises, the impact of food patterns, how might this change how we advocate for kids with ADHD? Could these insights shape conversations about school lunch programs, PE curriculum, even the design of after-school activities to better support neurodiversity? Lots to think about there. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of non-pharmacological ADHD interventions. Until next time, keep digging, keep learning, and keep connecting those dots.